Hello, and welcome to the Psych and Business Podcast, where we highlight the integration of psychology and psychological principles in the world of business and organizations. I'm your host, Dr. Ernest Wayde. All right, today I have a wonderful guest for you today. She's a good friend and an amazing leader that I have had the privilege to work with and learn from in the past. Her name is Joy White. Joy and I knew each other where we were both at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Joy is now the Director of Clinical Operations at the UCI Health Systems, where she oversees clinical care operations and management at this level 1 academics healthcare system. I can tell you from having observed Joy that she is a human-centered leader who cares about patients and her team members. Joy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. May I call you Ernest? I see Dr. Ernest Wayde. Thank you so much for having me.
Please call me Ernest, Joy.
I am super excited about being here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here, Joy. You do so much that I know we're going to have such a great conversation. But before we jump into the things that you do, tell us your story. How did you get interested in healthcare and end up in leadership?
Oh, man. I tell this story. I was 12 years old working with my dad in a furniture store. And so I think that was the first job I held. It kind of established me in terms of accountability, dependability, all of those things. So started really young, but healthcare became a passion of mine after I had my son, and he was born with a congenital heart defect called tetralogy of Fallot. And being a young mother, first child, and totally afraid, I just remember sitting in Children's Hospital and the physicians would come by and talk with me. But it was the nurses who took their time and explained what was happening and asked me how I was feeling and acknowledged my fear and all of those things. And I thought, my goodness, I want to do this. And so that was really the catalyst for nursing for me. So that was the nursing story. As I got into nursing and just passionate about what I was doing, I was 6 months in as a charge nurse. And what I realized was it wasn't just my patients that I wanted to make sure felt the energy and enthusiasm and were refreshed and renewed every day in delivering care, but it was my colleagues. And so I became kind of the mama bear of my colleagues, making sure everyone took their breaks and got outside in the sunshine and came back with renewed energy to continue to do the work we were doing. And within 6 months, I was a charge nurse, and really the rest is history. I went from charge nurse to nurse manager and just kind of matriculated from there.
Yeah, I love that story, Joy, and that's so like you from what I know of you, caring about other people. Tell us about the work that you do now, because I know that even in the work that you do now, mentoring and team building is a big part of it and really important to you.
It is. So I have the great privilege of working for the University of California, Irvine Health. We're in Orange, California, Southern California. And so I lead a clinical operations team. So it's a multifaceted team. I've got health supervisors, the transfer center, the transport and lift team. We also have the float pool, the discharge hospitality lounge. So all things patient movement and patient throughput across the health system. And you're right, it requires a focus on team. I am a people leader at heart. I believe if we take care of people, they take care of our patients, they take care of our organizations, they take care of our business. Our bottom line is better when we take care of the people who are doing the work. So it's always been my focus. I have had mentors my entire career, and what they always share with me is my number one job, regardless of what my title is, my number one job is to lead and to mentor the people doing the work. And if my calendar doesn't reflect that I'm doing that, then I'm too far in the weeds. And so I make sure that my calendar reflects my number one job, and that is to lead and mentor people. And so it is the part of my work that I enjoy the most.
I love what you said, that your calendar reflects what's most important to you, right? Your priorities are shown by where you spend your time, where you put your energy. And I think that's something that leaders don't recognize and appreciate enough, is when you're leading people, you have to spend your time with those people.
Exactly.
Now, Joy, I know that you are someone who cares about psychological safety, and as reflected by that open communications, the active listening, basically creating that culture of trust and collaboration. Tell us about your leadership experiences that have helped you to understand and appreciate the need for psychological safety. What examples have you seen that shows how psychological safety can help or hinder if you don't have that?
Yeah, no, thanks. And what a great question. I think being in environments where I haven't had it has been one of the best teachers because not every job is roses, unicorns, and rainbows. And in those moments when it's really, really difficult, I always step back and say, okay, I'm learning. No matter what is happening, I'm learning. I'm learning who I want to be and what I want to do as a leader. And I'm learning what I don't want to do and who I don't want to be as a leader. And so I've been in environments and circumstances where it hasn't felt safe to raise concerns or, as I call it, to pull the end on cord and raise something that may shift everything we're doing or turn or change the trajectory of the team, and how that hinders not only team morale, but the productivity of the team overall. And so that is one of those examples of what not to do, how not to be. And so being in an environment where I have the opportunity and the responsibility of a team, my goal is always to create openness and transparency. What that means is admitting that I'm not the smartest person in the room. Just because I'm the leader, I know that the ideas on how we move things forward, how we problem solve, how we address issues very often come from the folks that we're leading. And being humble enough also to listen and be open to a different way of thinking and a different way of being. And that creates psychological safety when people have room to express what matters most to them, even if it is kind of against the establishment or not in the direction that we're headed. I think it is having the freedom to voice your opinions and concerns.
I love that, the freedom to voice your opinions and your concerns. And I think that's especially important in healthcare, right? If you're not expressing your concerns in healthcare, that can lead to some pretty serious consequences.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the story that you told me, Joy, once, of when you were first put into one of your nurse charge positions and the team wasn't functioning well. Tell us that story and what you did to bring the team around. I love that story.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I'll try to keep it at a high level. New nurse manager coming into the VA for the very first time and had assumed leadership for a team that had had a lot of turnover in leadership. And so they were very guarded, I think, as a team, somewhat distrusting as a team. And because of all the things that had transpired historically, really, I felt like they were stuck. So our ability to move forward as a team and attach ourselves to a new vision and move forward, we as a team were stuck. And so in one of my staff meetings, I started having regular staff meetings, regular one-on-ones. And early on, within the first 90 days, I held a staff meeting. I was not sure if I would be let go after this or not, because of course, working in a union environment, this was a pretty crazy idea. But my team came in, the lights were low, I had candles, it was rather dark, seating was everywhere, and I had this large, almost body-sized basket in the front of the room, and there were pencils and notepads in each of the chairs. And as they walked in, I welcomed them to what I call the funeral of the past. So I encouraged each person to write down the things that really bothered them from the past, things that did not go well, things that they had perhaps suggested and they failed, or comments from physicians or colleagues that really hurt them in some way or made them feel like they were not valuable as a team. Whatever it was that they were holding on to that was preventing us from moving forward, to write it down. And when they were ready, I opened the basket and invited them to drop those concerns in the basket. And I gave them instructions that when that basket closed, we were burying it and we were fresh start and we were moving forward. And I will tell you, within 6 months, not only where we had a 40% vacancy in nursing, we did not have the reputation I think that we wanted to have as a unit with our colleagues in other units and our physician partners, and even with some of our patients. Within 6 months, our vacancies were down to under 15%, which means our turnover was lessened. Our customer satisfaction went up 30%, and our employee satisfaction went up 40%. And that was in a 6-month time period because we just let go of what was holding us back in the past.
That's such a powerful story, Joy. I love the outcome there. I want to dive a little bit deeper there. Help us understand, what did you do? What happened there that led to all of these great outcomes? Because it sounds like you burn the concerns, but how did that lead to all of these great outcomes? Help us understand that.
Yeah, I think the first thing was acknowledging that this stuff existed. And very often we come in and we want to just say, let's fresh start it. But we've got
Yeah.
to acknowledge the past. And I think part of it, letting them lean in, was letting go of the past. And then the second thing I did is recognize that the answers, the solutions, they had them. So creating a forum within our staff meetings and one-on-ones for them to make suggestions. If you were sitting in my seat, how would you solve this? And giving them the runway to try it. Is it moral, legal, and ethical? Then let's go. Let's give it a whirl. Let's try. What do you need from me to support you in trying something new? And so when they realized that they were empowered to actually change the environment, they began to garner the support of their peers, pull together committees and subcommittees, and try new things. I am thrilled with all of this changing. I mean, they changed hours and shifts and they accommodate one another, with I can't work a 12-hour shift, but I can work 4 and then I need to leave to,
Yeah.
pick up my loved one or my child from school. They figured out how to create a schedule that allowed some that were in school to continue to work while they had their school schedules. And I had not one grievance from the union. So I empowered them to try new things.
Yeah.
Was everything, did we knock it out of the park? No, we didn't. We had some failures. And I think part of winning was when they failed, they didn't freak out. And I didn't freak out and go, oh my God, you guys failed. We're going back to the old way of doing things. But we made failure part of the process. What did we learn here, right? What would we do differently if we had to start over? What would we change?
Yeah.
And so giving them the leeway to even fail, because in healthcare, you fail and it could mean somebody's life. And so they're really kind of honed in and trained that way. But when you're talking about process improvements that are not patient dependent, we can take some risk.
Yeah.
And so giving them the opportunity and the leeway to take some risk and to implement some things and try them, I think really got us far, because then momentum builds and they see some wins. They get some successes. New people are joining. I think the other thing is by holding one-on-ones, really understanding what the strengths of my team were and looking for opportunities to let them really exercise where they're strong and really highlight and shine in those places and show their peers even who didn't know that they had certain strengths. And so
Yeah.
I think that began to show, oh my gosh, collectively, we're a powerhouse of a team, because Ernest is really great in this, Joy is really great in this. And when we put these two things together, I mean, there's little that we can't do. And so I think it was that and celebration. I'm a party girl. So celebrating the successes, no matter how small they were, we celebrated the little things. And so that allowed us to really get in this culture of continuous improvement, celebrating, identifying our strengths and resilience in terms of failing. We also got comfortable with change. And that was something that I think was almost post-traumatic stress for the team. Oh my gosh, there's another change. But we begin to lean into change and become more agile as a team.
Joy, you've outlined so many just excellent leadership activities and skills and abilities, from recognizing that is an issue, allowing people to be open and honest and speak, and engaging people, empowering them. I mean, knowing your people. You outlined so many great activities that leaders can and should be doing. I want to ask you about when you lead at a higher level, because I know, have led at some very high levels, both internal to public sector and in the private sector. Help us understand how you adapt or manage your leadership style when you have to deal with very high levels and now have to worry about or consider politics, because one of the things we know is there's politics everywhere. And the higher you get, the more tricky it gets. How do you manage that dance?
Yeah, I think part of it is it doesn't change in terms of knowing who you're leading and knowing who you're working alongside for. And so I think that's really important. What's important to my leader? What's important to the leaders of my organization? And once I know kind of that with them, I'll give you an example. If I'm advocating for resources, I know my leaders are going to want to know, what is the cost savings or cost avoidance or the impact for the organization for this thing, right? How I present that to my executive leadership is going to be very different than how I might present that to my team. So I think it's really knowing who your audience is, knowing what's important to the organization, aligning your activities with the mission and vision of the organization. I think it's really, really important, and tying it to that. So whether it's a resource request, whether it's a new pilot, something we want to try, how
Yeah.
am I connecting that to the mission and the vision of the organization for those that I report to, for those at a higher level, for the executives of the organization? And when you can make those connections and you know how to dance that dance, I mean, there's little that you can't accomplish. And very often you're given the green light and people are excited for the results. So I think that to me has always been key. What's important to my leadership? What's important to the organization? And how, and that's also a checks and balance for me. If this bright idea doesn't align with the mission or the vision of the organization or the direction, then perhaps this is something I need to reconsider. Like it's a nice to have, but it may not be, its time may not be now. So
Yeah.
it's also a good check and balance for me to make sure that the activities and the investments that my team is making and that I'm endorsing really do align with the organization.
I love the point that you made there about the way you communicate to different groups differs. You have to know your group. You have to know your audience. You have to know, what they care about, the what's in it for me from both, the leaders above you or your employees below you. I want to ask you a little bit about your leadership experience, because I know that you've talked about how you started off really young and developed leadership experience over time. I don't want people to think that leadership is all unicorn and rainbows, as you say, right? What's been hard about leadership for you? What are some of those hard lessons that you've learned?
One that I think I learned a while ago and I continue to refine, because leadership's never done in my mind. I'm always learning. It's really about communication. It is so critical. I can have, and in one instance, it was a project I was doing, and it was a big project. I was super excited to be given this level of responsibility. I was an early careerist, and this just seemed like, wow, they trust me to do this big thing that has like system-wide impact. And so I bring my team along with me, and I had it all mapped out, Ernest. This is what we're going to do, and and I want you doing this, and you over here. And I mean, I had the blueprint. I was ready to go, and I couldn't understand why the team wasn't charged with me. Like, what is wrong with you? They weren't on board. And what I realized is it was yet another change. I mean, this is, as they say, this is my ride or die team.
Yeah.
Wherever, if I was charged about it, they were gung ho. But this was flipping something on its head that we had done not even 18 months prior. What I failed to do is explain the why now, and what happens if we don't do this, what happens if we stay the same, what happens if we do. And so I realized the importance of really explaining the why. The project lagged for some time, and I really couldn't get to the bottom of why we just weren't scheduled, and there just seemed to be a lack of enthusiasm, and I chucked it up to people are just fatigued. But once I took a step back and really created the space to hear from the team, not about progress, but just about what they were feeling about the change, it all came out. And in fact, what they shared was really humbling. We felt like we thought we were a team, right? And your style had always been to come to us for insight and input, but you came to us with a blueprint already done. And it was as if we didn't have input into the process. We had some suggestions about perhaps how things could have been refined. And so I realized my enthusiasm sometimes as a leader, where you expect people, why didn't you speak up? Well, because you're the leader and you came to us with a cake already baked.
Yeah.
And you didn't ask for input.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's really important, because it's a blind spot to think that you see something in its totality. When you have smart, intelligent, innovative folks around you, use them. And so it really, again, was a humbling experience for me. So now I say communication is everything. This is what I'm thinking. I'm interested in your thoughts around this.
Yeah.
Is that always possible? No, there's sometimes as a leader, you have to make a definitive decision, and team, we got to go. This was not that. This wasn't that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Joy, from what I know of you. When you set up a team, one of the first things that you do is you help the team understand themselves and then share that with other team members. Also understand, why is that important to you? Why is that important activity for you to do when you're setting up a team?
Teams that are cohesed accomplish so much more. Think about rowers and people that do crew. There's got to be a reliance on one another in such a way that it is all about the team. And that there's no individual, and I hate to say so cliche, there's no I in team, but there isn't. So it takes all of us. I think about our bodies. My eyes can't do what my ears can do. My nose can't do what my mouth can do. In order for us to work as a team, it's really important to understand where our strengths lie, the functions that we all play, and to really be able to rely on the other members as we're trying to put together, accomplish a common goal. And so for me, recognizing that and creating that connection as a team, that reliance, that trust, right? That transparency as a team,
Yeah.
man, when I take the time to go slow and do that work, there's nothing that I could drop in the middle of this team and they go, okay, Ernest, you take that part because you're really, really strong at the negotiation. Joy, you take that part because you're really good at the policy writing and the detail. And the team can move so much more effectively, timely, projects stay on target, on budget, within scope, because we take the time to really cohese, really collaborate and get to know who we are as a team. So for me, it hasn't failed me yet. And there's so much evidence and research, as you know, psychologically in terms of dynamics of a team, right?
Yeah.
How they function, that norming, storming, forming, right? Performing. It's a real thing. And so why mess with what works, right? It's scientific.
Yeah, I know. I love that. It's scientific. There's research behind it. We know what works and we know what you need to do in order to be successful. So I think all of the things that you're talking about, I really appreciate, because you're a leader who is data driven. You make decisions based upon data and you make informed decisions. I really appreciate that about you, Joy. And yet you also care about people, right? And so you blend those two so well, the caring about the people, but also being efficient. I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about you as a leader. Tell us, Joy, what are you seeing in terms of leadership development in healthcare? What are the trends that you're seeing? What should we know about leaders in healthcare?
Yeah, I would say in healthcare, there's a huge movement regarding human-centered leadership. And the interesting thing about this human-centered leadership is that it is focused on the leader first. And that is a shift in paradigm, right?
What does that mean? Help me understand what you mean by that. Focus on the leader first.
So self, as a leader, I must self-care. I must fill up. I must know the things that motivate and inspire me so that what I present to my team, I'm whole in doing that. If I'm burnt out, if I'm distracted, if I am, torn in 50 million directions, if I am not, at peace and centered when I approach my team, what am I doing but demonstrating a frazzled leader to my team and saying, this is what leadership looks like, which is why there's so many that say, no, thanks. Those leaders are too stressed. It's too much pressure. It's too overwhelming. This new movement around human-centered leadership really focuses on self-compassion and kindness for the leader themselves, so that what they project, role model for their teams, is what healthy leadership looks like, right? And so it's these, especially when you think about generations in leadership, right? Generationally now, it is not about how late you work. Working 14 hours is a sign of excellent leadership. Answering emails at 11:30 p.m. at 4 a.m. means, boy, you are on it. Young professionals today, this generation values work-life harmony. I won't call it balance, because there are times in life where work is heavier and home is heavier. So I'll call it work-life balance. Work-life harmony. Where can we be in harmony, even if one part of our life is taking up a little bit more than the other? That's what's valued now. And so how do I, as a leader that has maybe 15 years ahead of me as a senior leader, before I'm going to want to go paint on an island somewhere or sell real estate or do, home remodels, how am I preparing for the generation behind me to see leadership as attractive and not something that completely depletes you for 20 years? And so that's a movement that I see in leadership development, is learning how to really create that model that allows you to be a healthy and whole leader and have enough to share with your team in a way that attracts others to leadership and that you can appropriately succession plan. I think the other thing is falling into change and being agile. And what does that look like? Because there is also an extent to which you say, as a leader, hold the line. We're going to stop the line here because I'm seeing the signs of burnout in the team. I recognize the change fatigue. And so this is a really interesting dance that as senior leaders, we have to really pay attention to, right? What are the priorities? Because if you've got 25, then nothing really is.
Yeah, I love what you're saying here, Joy, about healthy leaders. I think we don't spend enough time thinking about what is a healthy leader, what does that look like, and why is that important in terms of modeling what leadership should look like in terms of looking after yourself. I'm such a big proponent of that leadership starts with yourself. Self-awareness, self-management, these are all key things that you need to figure out first before you go stand in front of a group of people and say, follow me. Right? You need to know who you are.
That's right.
This has been such a great conversation. How do people get a hold of you if they want to connect, if they want to follow the conversation? I mean, there's so much that you do and know. How do people contact you?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn, Joy N. White on LinkedIn, and I would love to continue the conversation. I'd love to, if someone wants to reach out and they just want to chat outside of this, absolutely happy to entertain more conversation. If you can't tell, I really love leadership and I value what it can do and how it can change organizations, shift paradigms. One of the things I want to put a plug in is there's a book called Human-Centered Leadership in Healthcare. So I want to share that as an amazing read. The authors are Kate Kennedy, Lucy Laseric, and Susan Campus. And it is phenomenal.
Human-Centered Leadership in Healthcare.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Joy, before I let you go, what's a tip that you can share with leaders, organizations, especially in healthcare, because you have such expertise there?
How do I narrow it down to one thing? And I think if I had to narrow it down to just one thing, I think I'd repeat something that I already said, Ernest. Recognizing that as a leader, what our role is. Our role is to lead and to mentor people, right? And the time that we spend, as evidenced by our calendar, right?
Yeah.
Should show that we are doing just that. We are so much more productive as a healthcare system, as an organization, as an industry, when as leaders, we take the responsibility of leading people seriously. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
It's about the people. Take care of your people and they take care of your business.
Yeah, I love that. Take care of your people, take care of your business. I'm going to challenge people, if you're a leader out there, look at your calendar and see where you're spending your time, see where you're spending your energy. Joy, such a pleasure to have you on. You're welcome back anytime to share more stories and more of your knowledge and insight with us.
Thanks so much. I enjoyed our time together and look forward to coming back again.
Awesome. And to our audience, we hope you'll join us again next time.